Okay, recording in progress. That means that we are start our weekly learning events in Suwara QA community. And I know there are some people who is first time join us, some people who not first join our events because we learn a lot, we organize a lot of events. And right now we have a special event. I call it special because I would think like, okay, we have a big Ukrainian community, and usually we are learning from ourselves. And I want to bring some new ideas outside of Ukrainian bubble, outside of Ukrainian expertise, and invite expertise abroad into Ukrainian community and to learn more outside of our bubble. And today I want to introduce uh, our special guest for today, Alan Page. Welcome here. Welcome to our Ukrainian community. And today, I think we will going to have a great talk about modern quality, quality engineering in modern world. And we are here to learn from you and get our insights.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I know um, it's a bit of a landmark day in Ukraine, so I'm honored to be here and happy to share my thoughts. They're not always conventional, so we'll get some good questions at the end, but just want to take some time here and share some thoughts I've been thinking about and writing about for a long time. So let me go ahead and I actually practiced this yesterday, so I can share my screen successfully. Look at that. And I have to, and it's funny. We've been using, ever since the pandemic, especially, we've been using Zoom for everything. Yet, people will still ask the exact same question all the time. Even though I know you can see my screen, people will always ask, "Hey, can you see my screen?" So a couple head nods. Yeah, we're good. All right. So, let's get started. And again, I'm excited to be here today. I will see if I can get a chat when I can glance at chat once in a while. I may not take all the, I very likely will not take questions in real time, but I can adjust as I go. So before we start, that's me, beard a little longer. Uh, some context. All of the photos today in my presentation are from a hike I did last summer of the Pacific Crest Trail. I left my full-time job last April, and I decided to walk on a hiking trail from the Mexican border to the Canadian border. It's about 4,300 kilometers. Took me just almost 4.5 months. And when you walk for 4.5 months, you have a lot of time to think. And I just let my brain wander, and I can't even begin to describe all the things I thought about, but I thought a lot about systems, signals, and teams and the way they work. I thought about past jobs. I thought about uh, just kind of how the things work, how quality works. I've been doing this for a while. I'll talk about that in a minute. And I realized that systems have constraints that we work within, and the trail had constraints. Uh, Elevation, everybody hiked the same elevation. I couldn't change mountains. I couldn't change where water was. I couldn't change the weather. I could only control what I could control. Many things were out of my control. I had to work within that system. And so I'm going to talk a lot about systems today. So in context, what I'm talking about is I don't mean software system. I mean the environment people operate inside. So a system is the incentives people respond to, the constraints they work in, feedback loops that can amplify or dampen behavior, visible consequences of success and failure, and trade-offs that are easy versus expensive. It's the structure that makes certain behaviors predictable. So in short, a system is the combination of rules, rewards, constraints, and feedback that reliably produces outcomes. So this is not a talk about culture in the abstract. It's about the conditions that shape behavior and whether you intend them to or not. So that's what the talk's about. A quick context on me. I started in testing and quality in 1995. I tested networking on Windows 95. I'll tell a story about that later. Eventually, I moved into, actually not too far. At some point, I moved more into infrastructure and platforms. Even before CI and continuous delivery became a thing, I worked on a lot on internal platforms, internal infrastructure for build and test. And then eventually I moved into engineering leadership roles. And what I found in that progression was at every step, I had more ownership of quality and less direct control over it. And in hindsight, I was talking to a friend of mine, Elizabeth Hendrickson, about this last week on the A/B testing podcast, which is my podcast you can check out. Uh, she said, I never had control. I had levers. I had more levers to influence quality. And eventually I realized something that may be obvious to some of you already, is that quality isn't something you add. You don't add some quality to a product by testing it at the end. You don't bolt it on. You don't test quality into a product. It's something that the system produces, that system we talked about earlier. The system produces what the system helps you produce quality. This is why, and what the talk's really about, is a good software team can make mistakes and make bad software. Bad software teams can get lucky and make good software once in a while, but usually they don't. But we want to talk about how good software, we want to get to a point where good software teams make good software reliably. And that's what the talk is about today. So I'm going to talk about a team I've worked with, and we'll come back to them quite a bit to help tell this story today. But and probably, hopefully, this rings a bell for some of you. It was a good team. I've been writing about quality and systems for a while. If you're following, I write at angerweasel.substack.com. I'll give a link in somewhere towards the end of this talk. But since I've been back, I've been writing about systems and signals for a while. And so to start, I'm going to talk about a team I work with. Experienced, smart, they cared about their work. Probably sounds like a lot of your teams. Good engineering practices. They did code reviews. The devs wrote lots of tests. The testers helped. They did some testing and helped guide the developers in their testing. It was clear ownership and accountability of quality. They weren't sloppy. They weren't inexperienced. We were a team who were not only trusted with responsibility, we were given responsibility for some pretty important products. So all set up for success, right? Well, despite all of that, we shipped failures that mattered. We shipped failures that customers noticed, that leaders noticed, the team noticed. And again, some of this is going to ring bells for some of you. These were the kinds of failures where everyone, for better or for worse, would ask, how did this make it out? They weren't, and we're not talking huge errors. We didn't bring down half the internet, Cloudflare, Amazon, and we didn't lose millions of dollars in revenue, but there were noticeable errors that leadership noticed and customers noticed. Think of things like a misconfigured feature flag that exposed a whole bunch of unfinished functionality. Oops. Or a regression, like a perf regression that only appeared under actual customer load. And I know probably a lot of you, or most of you, all of you here today are testers, and you've heard this a million times. The question is, how do we not find this? I'm not even going to say how to test miss this, because that's just, nobody should ever ask that question. How did we not find this? Even in teams where everyone owns quality, where everyone's accountable for quality, the question still stings. We were careful, we did everything right. But maybe we didn't do everything right because we still made a mistake and customers were impacted. So what happened? And again, this isn't an uncommon story. Areas like this, areas like this are probably something you've seen now. But it's also fair to note that these are small errors in the big scheme of things, but they impact customers and the team could do better. So what happened? When I was hiking in the California desert, one of the mistakes I made, a signal I ignored, was I had some sand in my shoe. And I could feel it, but I didn't see a good place to sit and fix my shoe, and my legs were feeling good, so I kept walking. By early afternoon, when I finally stopped, I had the beginning of a blister on the bottom of my foot. So I dealt with some pain from that for a few weeks after that because I ignored a signal early in the morning. And sometimes we do that in software. We ignore something, thinking it's not that big of a deal, or no, or thinking we can deal with it later, and it turns into something bigger, something that's impactful. And don't worry, I'm not going to tell a hiking story on every single slide, just every other slide, maybe. So if every decision the team made was reasonable, um, nobody tried to no, and again, you work on software teams and good software teams. Um, Nobody was trying to do anything wrong. Um, and we did retros on these things. I've said many times, I'll tell you this, my advice is, other than your one-on-one with your manager, your team retrospective is the most important meeting you can have. I really believe in them. So we did retros faithfully, not just at the end of our iterations to talk about kind of how the work went, but after anything, I'm going to call them failures or bugs or defects. I'm going to call them anything that was unexpected. We would do a retrospective. Very lightweight, half hour. Let's just talk about these things. So these were no blame retros. And we walked through the timeline of how one of these errors happened. And it was just what you'd want to see. Nobody was defending themselves. There was no blame. Instead, the team was taking time to explain trade-offs and decisions. And something I will say, I will give you some more advice. Something I say in retros a lot is every time someone makes a decision, it can be the VP in the group, it could be the tester who was hired a month ago. When you make a decision, you are making a decision because you feel safe in that decision given the information you have. People don't make decisions like, I'm YOLO, let's ship it. No, you feel safe making that decision. So we made decisions based on what we knew, and we didn't know enough, but we did. There were signals. In the retro, I heard things like, we knew it wasn't perfect, but the deadline mattered. And after that, at one point, I have now banned the word deadline. Unless it's for like an EU directive or a compliance thing, I do not like deadlines for shipping software. Um, the quality matters. At the time, I was young. I didn't know. Younger. And I was more inexperienced. Age doesn't matter. Um, People said they saw, oh, I saw something weird in monitoring, but I didn't see it again, so I ignored it. And you've probably heard this before. And imagine, I'm probably a lot of you can imagine, have not imagine, a lot of you experience this. Oh, we saw that bug that the customers are seeing, but we couldn't reproduce it. And I heard things like that in the retro. And so we had signals. And these weren't excuses. The team was good. And we had a lot of trust on the team. They weren't excuses, they're just facts and reasoning. Every decision made sense, and we ignored the signals. And that's the part that bothered me. If every decision felt reasonable at the time, and we still got a bad outcome, what happened? Well, we rely on our instincts a lot. Um, we all have gut feel about things. We trust our instincts, and we trust them because most of the time they serve us well. They're accurate. They're fast. The brain prefers speed over accuracy when time or energy are limited. And their pattern recognition. And what I found in testers especially is uh, pattern pattern finders. And our brains compress thousands of past experiences into a gut feeling or an instinct. So why wouldn't we trust them? Well, the problem is, if you take a step back, and one of my trail thoughts is that instincts are trained by the system you've been in. If the system has flaws, your instincts have flaws too. So in complex systems like delivering software, not only the software itself, but the people aspect around software, and Jerry Weinberg always says, eventually in technical issues, it's always a people problem. Absolutely true. Systems are people problems. Um, our instincts fail us. We say things like, we've shipped worse bugs than this before, or This warning never caused a real problem. Think of this build warning or deployment warning, the one you ignore all the time, the yellow that shows up in your build or your release that you say, well, that's there all the time. We don't worry about that. Or we'll clean it up next time. Tech debt's fine. We'll clean this up. It's not going to cause any problems. The signals are there, but the system, in one way or another, and we'll talk about some examples in a minute, has taught us that we can ignore some signals, and it's fine. And then when something goes wrong, we feel responsible for fixing it. So what do we do when we hit these errors? Well, I'll tell you because I've done these things and your teams have probably done them too, and every team does them. So I feel pretty good about these. Because this story feels familiar. When something like this happens, we add process. We add reviews, we add new check-in gates, we add accountability. If you're Microsoft, you appoint someone with the title of quality czar. I just saw that article from like 2 weeks ago. I wrote about it. We we do something that feels responsible and it feels like leadership, but it's not. I mean, the response is adding more quality gates, adding more to your CI system, your CD system, more checks, more tests, more static analysis. It feels good because you can say, look, we had this error, but we did this. We did a mitigation, and now leadership stops bothering you because you recognize the error, you did something about it. Um, you you don't need to rethink the organization or how people work together to add a checklist. I'm not saying these checklists are bad. I'm saying they're band-aids on top of a flawed system. These sorts of things are reassuring. They give you the sense that control has been restored. Oh, look, we've added tests for all these things that failed in the last release. Now we're never going to have quality problems again. You know I'm lying. Uh, when you add accountability and something goes wrong, everything feels responsible. Adding an extra review at the end or a checklist to go through, a deployment checklist, additional reviewers, it feels like we're adding care. And uh, one of my favorite books on quality is a book it's a philosophy book by Robert Pirsig called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And I'm a motorcycle rider as well, but the book isn't really about motorcycles. It's a book on the philosophy of quality. And essentially, it boils down to care and quality are two sides of the same coin. We put care into software, we should get more quality. And it works almost all the time, but it doesn't. We need to fix the systems things are in. So, Sidney Dekker, he's in an industry called, mind blanking, safety research. Safety research? He has a book called Drift into Failure. Here's the important part. I talk about drift a lot. And in Drift into Failure, he explains that organizations don't collapse or cause errors or have huge failures because people suddenly become careless. They don't. They're careful people. They drift. And when you look at things like, I'll finish my St. Decker talk, they drift towards failure through a whole bunch of small, reasonable decisions that make sense locally until the system normalizes the risk something bad happens. When, uh, you can look at, it's probably worth talking about. There was a CrowdStrike issue last year, maybe just about a year ago, a little more, where every Windows machine in the world wouldn't boot. Maybe it wasn't that many. Amazon goes down for, one of the regions goes down for a while. There's been some huge errors out there. And every time there's one of these, I laugh because I go to LinkedIn and every other post is someone talking about, oh, this was just a testing issue. They just should have tested for this. I know how to fix this. Hire me. This would never happen. These things are never that easy. And I think most of you know this. When these failures happen, they are because a whole bunch of things led to slowly to a larger error. Um, and I'm not on these teams to know exactly what happened, but it's never one for these huge errors. It's never one thing that went wrong. It's a bunch of things happened that led to one of these big errors happening that impacted, in some of these cases, millions of customers. Quick hiking story. I was hiking through the mountains in California, the Sierra, And I was there in June and they were largely still covered in snow, which meant the trail was covered in snow. And I had a map, but I wasn't staring at the map all the time because I didn't want to slip on the snow and, die. So the trail would hit snow and I would walk in the exact direction I thought I should go. And I swear I would walk 100 meters. I would not know where I was. I would check the map and somehow I was already 50 to 60 meters off trail. Just a small teeny, like one little bit of trajectory wrong, and I'm lost. So while the PCT may be 4,300 miles, I may have walked an additional, sorry, meters, uh, kilometers, math. I may have walked an extra 500, 600, just getting lost and finding the trail again because I made decisions about where to go that were wrong and they drifted me into failure. Luckily, I never walked off a cliff. Um, I did have some sketchy snow descents, but and nothing dramatic happened. It made my forward motion slower. All right, those responses feel right. We add lots of checks, and these are good things to do, but the system stays the same. None of those are all good fixes to make, and I have added my fair share of static analysis checks and tests to checking gates over the years and stop, bad things from happening. But these fixes don't change the system they're operating inside. The incentives are the same, the constraints are the same, the trade-offs people have to make are the same. What we've done is we've added friction, but we haven't changed direction. And it's a scenario that may seem familiar. If your team keeps missing release dates, uh, leadership may add, let's say, do more planning, like plan better. Like you know how well that works. When you miss release dates because you have unknown unknowns because you're being rushed. But adding a checklist or an approval gate isn't going to fix that problem. If when I worked at Microsoft, especially, I worked at Microsoft for 22 years. We had a lot of our program managers whose bonuses and incentives were based on hitting dates, and they would push us to ship this quarter, ship this year, ship by this date. Dates that were set and features that were set before we did the planning and discovery. So what do you think happened? We hit those dates, and surprise, Microsoft shipped buggy software. Or we'd add you must do this checklist before checking in, and we would do it, but it would be done at 3 a.m. by some tired hero employee before deploying the next morning at 7 a.m. You can, if the system, people will comply with the system. Um, if you give them process, they will follow it, but it may be like water flowing down a hill. They may just go the path of least resistance and work their way around it. I'll tell a story about that in a little bit. So the point is, if we can do these things and they will improve quality, these processes, these checklists, these tests, but the system is what we want to look at for long-term quality improvements. So if we go back to the team, my example team, exactly what happened. We added more reviews. We added more steps, more tests, more caution. And then for a while, as you'd expect, things looked better. Until they didn't. In our case, we had a group review at the end for any new feature to make sure it was uh, to make sure we weren't missing anything, to make sure ask all the questions you'd ask in our code review or a feature review before release. But what happened was engineers would stop raising their small concerns early because they thought it'll get caught in final review. You know where this is going, right? So the pull requests got bigger. Early feedback decreased because we'll get it later. We accumulated a lot of risk, like the opposite of what we wanted to happen. This is water flowing down the hill. It's going to be caught in final review, and we have all these extra tests and static analysis tools in CI. I don't have to put as much care into my development work because it'll get caught later. And then we had, oh my God, so many of these at Microsoft especially. And maybe you have some on your team, but do you have that senior engineer who's known as the person who always catches things late? I won't name names here, but I can give you names of folks that were famous for this at Microsoft. Um, Heroes. Leadership loves heroes. Leadership usually rewards heroes. Oh, thank you. I'm gonna give a fake name. Thank you for coming in late and fixing this error at the last minute. And when you do that, that's the system learning something. The system learns that quality problems can be caught at the end and that it was okay. And you on this call, you know that quality at the end, not a good idea, right? We need to build it in from the beginning, which sounds like a little bit like hyperbole, but let's talk about the system, how we can avoid getting there. So what actually changed was the cost of doing good work. Because feedback took longer, people found workarounds just to get things done. More heroes started to appear. More people worked late. More problems were caught at the last minute. We went from a pretty good team to a not so good team because we taught the system the wrong things. It felt like success because we were catching these errors at the end. We were good at catching errors at the end. Um, but in hindsight, our system was failing. I want to tell a little story about incentives, and that may be relevant to this audience. From way back 30 years ago, I started at Microsoft. I started at Microsoft testing networking components on Windows 95. And oh man, it's over 30 years. We're in 2026 now. Oh my gosh. My manager told me in 1995, you're expected to find 10 bugs a week. And hopefully none of you are on teams that have bug quotas. This was even at the time I knew it was dumb. So every week, I'm a little bit of an overachiever. I want to do well. So every week I would report 15 bugs because that's way more. That's 50% more than 10, right? But um, if you're clever like me, some weeks I would find 20 or 30 bugs, but I wouldn't report them all. I would save some for the next week just in case my bug well dried up. So the incentive was there, go find a bunch of bugs in the system. But I was worried about, well, I gamed the system to make sure I would always look slightly better than average without having a bad week in there. So the system, I broke the system. The system was not rewarding the right thing. Yeah, yeah, bad, bad. Yeah, I see some of you have experienced some things like this. Like it's broken, right? It's broken. We want to find out how our system missed these things. So at this point, the system was no longer just strained, our system was confused. We had accumulated so many small adjustments, exceptions, and temporary fixes that no one could explain what success actually meant anymore. We had signals competing with each other. Ship fast, but don't break production, and reduce tech debt, and hit the date, and improve quality. That's worse than the iron triangle. Like, think of that again. Like, let's ship quickly, but don't break prod, and reduce our tech debt, and make sure we hit the date and improve quality. We can't do all, like, if everything's important, nothing's important, right? We didn't need another fix. There's no process that's going to go fix these things. We needed to take a step back and ask a different question about what the system was actually rewarding. Um, Maybe another hiking story I just thought of. Oh, math. Uh, I'll put it this way. Um, yeah, the freedom units are just so hard to explain to anyone outside of the US. But pack weight, my pack on the PCT, was less than 3 kilograms. But an extra half a kilogram, like if I wanted to carry extra stuff, didn't matter. And there were people carrying very heavy packs from the beginning, and their knees hurt and their feet hurt. And there are these things called hiker boxes that were in towns where people were shedding stuff they didn't want anymore. And they were just a gold mine of hiking equipment that you could pick up if you wanted, but nobody wanted the extra weight. So an extra half a kilogram doesn't seem like much weight, right? Probably it's the weight of this coffee cup right here. But carrying that for hundreds or thousands of kilometers, it's a lot of weight. It adds up. Uh, I I carried a Kindle for half the hike. I read a lot during half the hike, but as soon as I wasn't reading at night anymore, I sent it home. Every every little bit matters. But every added ounce or approval, or every extra step or workaround, are all small things, but collectively they're huge. The weight adds up, the workarounds, they add up. Um, so in the end, that's my hiking story. We were asking the wrong question. We kept asking, and you've heard this before, who missed this? And nobody raises their hand, of course. Or which checking, or maybe it's better yet, which checking gate failed? Which test didn't run? And those questions you may have asked before on your teams, they do not get you anywhere useful. The question that finally helped us was different. What did the system make easy? And hold on to that phrase. I'm going to expand on it a little bit. Um, People will take the easy path, the water flowing down a hill, especially under pressure. And I would say even as the humans, uh, when I think people under pressure reveal their true nature, and but systems as well. And the metaphor I like to use here is if you put a door on a building and the door is hard to open, you can train people to push harder, or you can fix the door. Quality work is about fixing the door. If every time someone submits a change, it takes 3 days to get a review, you can tell engineers to be more responsive to reviews. Or, and you've probably, and some of you may have seen it before. I'll tell you a story about it in a second. Or you can look at workload, ownership clarity, and work in progress limits, or whatever else is what are the things keeping people from reviewing? They're not lazy. Your developers, your team isn't lazy. If it takes 3 days to get a review done, maybe there's too much work in general. That review is important. Um, there was a team I was on at Unity. I worked at Unity game development software and a bunch of other things. Um, our desktop product check-ins took not only days, sometimes a week or more from a check-in to leave a developer desktop to get to a build that could actually be tested by the test team. Horribly long. And what teams would do, uh, it's again working within the system, is they would start to merge together a bunch of PRs. Here's 3 features in one PR. Here's 12 bug fixes in one PR. And, small changes, easier to test, easier to isolate. But the system, uh, the way they worked around the system was just merge a bunch of stuff together. It's not that like one person on the team, the dedicated check-in person. Everybody would get their changes and they'd check them in and merge them in and babysit it for make sure it got into the build. Uh, it was, if you look at the behavior, it's not the behavior we want, right? So you don't just tell people to stop doing it. You look at why did the system make this the easy solution for this problem? What can we fix about the system? If a bunch of bugs are getting to production, telling the team to be more careful isn't going to fix that issue. And I laugh because I won't even make this a trail story, but how many times have you been walking near a ledge or something cooking on a hot oven? Someone says, be careful. Like you weren't going to be careful in the first place. Software teams are always going to be careful. Um, you can't, that's not a verbal advice or reprimand or checklist isn't going to help. You need to change the system. Or you can look at incentives. We don't want to push the door harder. We want to fix the door to redesign the conditions. All right. More on system. This was where I shifted. Um, we were treating quality like something a person or a team could own. I know a lot of you are testers, and you are not, you do fantastic work, but you are not responsible for quality. In many cases, you're responsible for maybe exposing where quality issues could exist. And it's hard when you say the team, obviously in like agile testing, great book, and we hear a lot that whole team owned quality. I take a step back now, and I think the system owns quality. The team can only own quality if the system they're in supports finding quality. The QA team is not the last line of defense. You shouldn't be the person who's known for catching things. You're bringing things to light, you're finding information, you're helping the team deliver better quality software, but by all means, don't be in the business of being the last line of defense. It's a rough place to be. So the roles matter, QA roles matter, but they don't get to decide outcomes on their own. Quality doesn't live in a role. It lives in the system people are operating inside. When systems thinkers, Donella Meadows' book on thinking in systems, so good. Um, when they say these books say behavior follows structure, this is what they mean. So a little more about systems. Um, this is the part we miss. We see behavior we don't like, and I feel almost like a hypocrite for writing this because I say a lot to my teams, behavior comes from motivation. But I'm not always right when I say that because sometimes it's a system. When we see behavior we don't like, I assume motivation is the problem. But actually, most of the time, people are responding rationally to the system they're in. If you tell a team quality matters, but then you reward them on delivery dates and not on customer satisfaction, or if you say reliability matters, but you reward teams for reducing cloud spend even at the risk of reliability, um, you have trained the system is telling you something different than your words. Consequences shape behavior. These can be all sorts of incentives, even outside of software. Airlines can make minor deviations on when turnaround times tighten, like, oh, we'll skip this one thing. It only needs to be checked every other flight. Or hospitals could lighten requirements on hand washing. And maybe those things are okay, but in those sorts of situations, I would hope they wouldn't. I would hope airlines aren't skipping a step ever. I would hope that people in hospitals are, focusing on hand washing all the time. Those shortcuts matter, and we make shortcuts like that in software. We're not, hurting people usually on what software you're working on, but it matters to customers. If you go back to safety research, like in Sidney Decker's work, um, the data shows over and over, people don't cause failures on purpose. They're adapting to pressure. That failure happens. So, in our case, as I said before, the system produced exactly what it was designed to do. Every decision we made locally was rational, as I discussed before. They made sense on a local scale. They were optimizing for the signals that the system gave them. They weren't careless. Um, they were just responding to what the system amplified. Um, could be a ship date versus test coverage. Which is more important? If you're emphasizing the ship date and you can't get the test coverage you want, it's going to be code coverage, just another kind of coverage. Um, it could be a known containable risk versus an uncertain schedule slip, or whether you prioritize allowed customer escalation versus a more quiet internal quality concern. Um, each of these, no matter which you choose in those, the right choice is the one that the right choice the team made was the one that reduced immediate pain. And it can look like corners are being cut. Um, when we're shipping these bugs, it's like we cut corners, we skipped steps, we made a compromise. That compromise was a decision. Um, we felt good. Again, we felt safe making those decisions given the information we had. And so the failures we shipped weren't accidents, actually, as I think about it. The behavior matched the incentives. So, and these incentives come from the system, things like pushing deadlines or pushing, cloud cost, things that you need to think about what's the hidden cost of some of the decisions we're making. So the system was working exactly as designed. So we need to see the system. We had to stop looking at people and look at the system as a whole. So on the road, if there's an intersection where a bunch of cars are having car crashes, don't blame the drivers. Maybe add a stop sign or a traffic light. If smart people keep making the same mistake, it's not a talent issue. It's a pattern the system is producing. When one of my cars, I had a dream about this car last night. This is weird. Not in my notes. The dream doesn't matter, but uh, I had this Toyota truck I had a long time ago, and I used to lock my keys in the car all the time. I got really good at opening the door with a coat hanger. And then the car I got after that, this Toyota Prius, It was impossible to lock the keys in the car. I think most cars are like this today. The car won't lock if the keys are inside. So human error, I locked the keys in the car all the time, all the time. I don't know, I'm not dumb. I don't think I'm dumb, but I locked the keys in the car all the time. I made a mistake. And so thankfully, Toyota, it wasn't just for me, it was for a lot of people making the same mistake, the pattern of mistake making. They made it impossible to lock keys in the car. Little thing, boy, boy, was I happy. You don't fix recurring behavior by managing harder or coaching harder or leading harder. You fix it by changing the conditions that made the behavior work. So systems are teaching. Your system teaches whether you want it to or not. They don't teach through value statements, they teach through consequences. When slipping a date has a visible cost, but shipping a known risk doesn't, system has taught you what's important. And in a recent newsletter article, we can say we keep commitments, but if we reinforce that dates can flex under pressure, the system is teaching us something different than our values. If we say we value quality, but we reinforce speed, then the system is teaching us something different from our values. Say if we speak up early, but we're silent so we can avoid friction. I'm a big fan of uh, healthy, respectful debate, and everyone has a voice. And if people are quiet just so work moves on, they don't have to have the friction. Um, you're reinforcing a different thing. If we escalate risks, but ignore the weak signals that we're teaching the system, the weak signals don't matter. If we prioritize long-term outcomes, and we say we do, but we reward the heroes, that's what the system is teaching us. I don't see any red lights on the sharing. Weird. Okay.
Oh,
A concrete
oh,
example.
sorry, I interrupt. Yeah, this is not, maybe you don't see, but we
Oh,
can
right
see
here.
the, yeah, and also on other slide. I
Okay.
mean, on the part with
I don't
hand.
think it's covering it. I think we're fine.
Okay, I hope who draw it can just clean the screen,
It's
because
fine.
I
It's fine.
don't see
I don't think it's
who
distracting.
did it.
I am
Okay.
glancing over at chat once in a while and looking at the few faces I can see.
Okay,
So
awesome.
in Drift into Failure, and this is actually a lot of Richard Feynman's books as well, or one of Richard Feynman's books, talk about the Space Challenger disaster in whatever year that was, mid 80s. Um, Before the launch, engineers had raised concerns about the O-rings in cold weather. And this is going to ring a lot with software. This one had to be disastrous and killed people. But it wasn't a new risk that the O-rings wouldn't work. It had shown up before. I mean, people had raised it before, but previous launches had succeeded. So the the powers that be said, it's fine. Thanks for raising the risk. This actually will never happen. Um, and then the boundary moved, and eventually there was very bad things happened. And Decker calls this normalization of deviance. So we get used to things being a little bit off. And they're a little bit off and a little bit off, and eventually something bad happens. Nothing looks restless, looks nothing is broken, but the drift was already there. We see this all the time. And I'm going to share again, early in my leadership, a mistake I made. Yeah, this is the edge case. This will never happen until it does. And with software, at least, we're not going to hurt people. We can actually put in telemetry and monitoring to show, like, could this actually happen? Is our customers actually seeing this? And we do this a lot at Microsoft. One good thing about Microsoft, I pick on them a lot, but we had so many customers that we could get data on what actual errors they were seeing. So one of the projects, and this is a Microsoft project, my team was under delivery pressure to get something out. We were behind. I was getting pressure from leadership. And yeah, I mean, we all make mistakes, right? I'll share my own. I sincerely told the team, again, coming from quality, I said, quality matters, and we're not going to compromise. And then, without even missing a beat, I said, but we really need to try and hit this date. So I mean, in hindsight, at the time, I didn't think I was creating drift. I thought I was just helping them balance priorities. But then a test failed late in the cycle. I thought, I asked, and I love the edge case came in here because I asked, and you can hate me all you want. I'm gonna acknowledge my mistake. I asked, what's the actual likelihood this will impact customers? And even without an answer, the question shifted the frame. I was no longer asking, is this safe? I was asking, is this safe enough to ship? I changed the system. We shipped. Nothing bad happened with that error. With no, that error, people didn't hit it, but the system learned something. The next time we were close to a date, no one waited for me to ask, is this safe enough to ship? Or what's the actual likelihood this could happen? That was the system. I changed the system inadvertently. And what I told the team in those few little words was that speed may matter more than quality. Oops. Sorry. Sorry to that team. Sorry to any of you that I may have impacted with bad software for Microsoft. So the the signals are and what's uncomfortable both in talking about this team and the mistakes I made and the Challenger example is these aren't sudden failures. There were signals all the way along. Small failures, little things we noticed that weren't quite enough to delay shipping, workarounds that became normal, silence where questions used to be. Someone would notice something felt off, and they may speak up in a meeting and say, I might just ask that very timid question the way I love to ask questions with a point of curiosity. I might be wrong, but I don't think this will work under load. And I love it today when people ask those questions. I say, let's explore that. Let's go figure that out. At the time, they were ignored. Like, not worth worrying about. I've learned. I'm much better now, believe me. I'm looking for a job, so believe me, I'm much better. None of these were big enough things to stop the release or to escalate it. Um, I just some of these things you mentioned once, and then the system changes and nothing happens. So signals get missed because uh, and people struggle with this. The signals don't go away; they kind of fade away. And the great example from testing is and everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say this. It's the flaky test. I went to the Google Test Automation Conference about 10 years ago, one of the last ones they had. And every talk, no matter what the topic was on, they talked about flaky tests. I called it the Flaky Test Conference. And what do we do with flaky tests? Well, sometimes we turn them off. We isolate them, make sure they're fixed. Now, I will tell you and there was a team like the Microsoft Office team. I see a shaking head there, which is the right, thanks, Igor. That's the exact right response. Uh, the I worked briefly in a team adjacent to Microsoft Office, and their entire test team, all test developers, and that was the time still Microsoft still had a 1-to-1 test ratio. We're talking probably close to 1,000 testers, would spend the first 2 to 4 hours of every workday debugging tests from the test failures from the night before. So much so people would write tools to help try and like are all these to trying to categorize failures and see if a bunch of failures were the same thing and which ones were flaky and what to do with the flaky test. Oh, boy, what a mess. What a mess. But people ignore flaky tests over time. But you know what? I don't know about you. Some of my flaky tests have found some of the best bugs in the systems ever. Yeah, air quote flaky. They're flaky for it could be the test is flaky, it could be why it's finding stuff is flaky, it could be timing issues. If you don't investigate really deeply why they're flaky and either write a better test or write better code that can be tested better, you can't ignore those tests. So small little tangent into that. So they don't hurt. If if we turn off all the flaky tests and we turn green, here's a bit of advice for you. I think you probably know this. Customers don't care if 100% of your tests passed. They don't care if 70% passed. They care if the software solves their problem. So the system, when you ignore the flaky tests, the systems learn that that's acceptable behavior. Um, you have another metrics dashboard. As long as it shows green, we're good. You can say, but this isn't working. Doesn't matter. Dashboard's green. Adding an extra manual step just for now. As I mentioned before, ignoring the deployment warnings. This is a yellow thing. This is no big deal. Not going to cause a problem until it does. At some point, all that noise in the warnings we just ignore, and we don't know. We've forgotten what good looks like. So it's easy to ignore those signals. And then I mentioned these earlier, but I want to talk about heroes a little bit. This is where systems get a little tricky. Um, when things start to break, good people will step in. They'll work late. Oh my God. They love to catch issues at the last minute. And and my brain is going, I'm imagining the times this has happened where I've seen like the congratulations. Not only is the person fixing some hot bug at 11 o'clock at night, but then someone's coming in at midnight to congratulate them. It's like, oh my God. In hindsight, even at the time, it's like, oh my God, stop it. This is wrong. It makes it look like the system's working, and heroics feel good, both to the person, to the team. They go, oh, thank you for fixing our last minute issue. But they degrade the system. It's the same, this happened on a product I work on. The same person proudly saved the release 3 times in a row, proudly made the last check-in on the product before we shipped to customers. Like, and we're talking hours before it shipped. The system now depends on them being there to catch the late failure. Um, there's a thing, I think it's my last hiking story. We'll see. There's a thing hiking, if I've done a long distance hike, there's a thing called trail magic. Trail magic is when somebody who's not hiking, either on the side of a road crossing or maybe on the trail somewhere, they have brought food and drinks and maybe shade and things you can't carry in your backpack, like fresh fruit. Um, it's wonderful. We call it trail magic for a reason. It's like all of a sudden you get to a road crossing and oh my gosh, I'm starving. I didn't have enough food because I ate too much because I'm hungry. I'm walking 20 miles a day. Um, but you don't design a 4,300-kilometer hike around generosity. When it's there, great, but you don't plan on it. Heroes are like trail magic. They're wonderful people and they do great work, but man, please don't depend on them. Your software yourself or you're hiking with something. So what is your system optimized to produce? This is a question. Now, um, looking at the questions I ask organizations, it's not, what do we, I don't, your values are important as long as you live them. And I love, when I'm looking at jobs, I love job descriptions to talk about the values because then at least I have an idea they care about them. Like a lot of companies have values that they're just, and I can't tell you a single one of Microsoft's values because they were on a website somewhere, but they weren't lived day to day. Unity is pretty good. NBC somewhere in the middle. Um, Instead of asking what do we value or what matters, let's talk about our systems. What outcomes does our system reliably produce? What are our patterns? If you look at your own team, what kinds of problems show up over and over? Those aren't accidents, they're signals. So let's ask a different question because we were asking the wrong question on my team. It took me a long time to get there. What we want, don't want to ask who missed this, how do we miss this? Those questions. How do we change the system we work in to avoid failures like this? I'm loving the chat. Um, so we stopped fixing people. We stopped trying to teach people to push the door harder. We changed the system. I didn't tell the team to try harder, and because like that's horrible advice, right? Can you all try harder to ship quality software, please? Doesn't work. We didn't treat people, we stopped treating people as the problem at all. And again, it's always the system, it's never the people. The people work within the system they're given. We stopped asking them to be more careful inside the same kind of time constraints. Again, be careful. We changed the system they're working in. We removed deadline-based incentives. We made it easier and cheaper to stop a release. We encouraged people to bring up failures. We worked on shortening feedback loops everywhere. All things just to get better signals earlier. Nothing huge, no heroics, just some small structural changes. And what's cool about that is failures, the punchline to the story is, and then this team never made another failure ever again. That's untrue. It's impossible. That's impractical. The failures don't go away. That's not realistic. But they changed shape. They happened earlier. They were smaller and they were safer. Instead of being surprised late, we were interrupted early. Before, like we would see customer tickets or escalations, or I get paged 3 in the morning. Weekend war rooms. We changed the system and failures didn't disappear. They just came up earlier. Instead, we saw CI builds fail. Um, Features paused and canceled mid-sprint. Um, Lots more raised before release date was announced. The difference, we weren't looking for perfection, it was timing. We stopped being surprised and started being interrupted. Um, this is it's the only picture I'm going to comment on. This is me on top of Mount Whitney, which is the highest mountain in outside of Alaska in the U.S. And that's about, I think if my math is right, around 4,300 meters or 4,400 meters. Um, but in our case, and again, you are, and you know, I know a lot of you are on test teams, and testing is changing. I don't think the test role is going away by any means, but I think teams are learning. I mean, the test role is changing. You're more responsible for working with teams on delivering quality and and far less, I hope, of bolt-on quality at the end. And in all these cases, didn't replace the team. We didn't retrain everyone. We just gave people the same system and helped them produce different outcomes. The team didn't get, better. Their environment got clearer, made it easier for them to make good software. So every system you work in is teaching people something about what matters, about what's safe, and about what's rewarded. And the question, so your system, I've written about this, your system is always teaching. It's whether it's teaching the lesson you want. And I want to make this a little bit more practical before we stop for questions, because you might look at this and go, okay, Alan, looks like the leaders need to fix the system they're in because it's not us, it's somebody else's problem. That's not at all what I'm saying. You can fix the system in many small ways. And I'll give you some ideas. Instead of asking who missed this, in your retros, which again, I'll repeat, retros are, other than your one-on-one with your manager, the most important meeting your team can have. Um, don't ask who missed it or why weren't we more careful. Um, Ask, what in our system allowed this to occur? Why do we feel safe making this change? What trade-offs did we make? Ask good questions in your retros around how the system produced the error, not the people or the team or the checking gates or the tests. What in the system helped us occur? Look for signals. If you're seeing the same kinds of errors over and over, those are structural signals. And depending on the error, it may change what you do, but you can dig into those. If we're seeing, let me give I probably pick one of these. It's like, um, if nobody's speaking up in meetings, this is the one I get. If you're on a team of mine, I will draw you into questions. I will make sure everybody's voice is heard on whether something feels safe or good or not. But if you're having uh, like a end of sprint meeting, sorry, brain's fading here, and everybody's quiet, nobody's actually giving any feedback on a review, that means something, especially if something happens later. You can teach people how to ask the right questions. As testers, especially, I find testers are great at asking questions. And so use that power. Use your power of discernment to ask questions about things in meetings. Finding bugs late, like why are we finding so many bugs late? Like what in our system is enabling that to happen? These aren't easy things to do, but you're smart people. These are things you can do. And then probably the most important is imagine a complex piece of machinery. Um, Changing everything at once, probably a bad idea, right? If I'm working on, I would never work on my car engine. Um, I don't even work on my motorcycle engine. But if I were to, I wouldn't put on a new exhaust and uh, tweak the fuel injection and change the brakes and do this. I would fix one thing at a time, one small thing at a time. So pick something. Do your analysis, ask the questions, find the signals, and then find one small thing to change in the system. These are things you can do from any level in the organization. And again, it's not whether your system is teaching, it's find out if your system is teaching the things that your organization wants. And those are llamas in Washington. And thanks for, I think I timed that as well as I wanted, but I can take a bunch of questions. You're mine for, I'm yours for another 45 minutes. This was, thanks for walking through my talk on systems. It's probably a little different than you've heard before, but I hope it landed well for you, and I hope I can answer some of your questions. And then um, there's my Substack, but I'm going to go ahead and move on. I have one, just a reading list, and I'll share this PDF of these slides with Artem, and he can get them shared elsewhere. I'll get those to you right afterwards here. In fact, I think I can do, sorry, give me a second here. I will make it easier for all of you. If I can remember the name. Oh, I guess this one. One second here. Sorry. No, then I'll take questions. I didn't have this prepared.
All right. Thanks, Alan, for amazing talk. You saw our chat, a lot of plans. It means a lot of insights from our Ukrainian colleagues, not only Ukrainian. Okay, I think it's time. Yeah, cool. Thanks
Okay.
for sharing. And it's time for some questions. I got one. It's from Veronica. What about argument? When we sharp our feature, our competitors deliver.
So the question is, if I make sure I understand correctly, is our customers have a new feature and we have to get out the same feature, otherwise we're going to get behind. This is often a question for, the product and the team I mean, yeah, you need to compete. If they thought of the idea first and they got it out faster, you're playing catch up. So yeah, it's going to get out late, and I would never like what's going to happen, and it's a systems problem. Let's look about this as a system. Let's say my customer has a new feature of shimmery blue menus. We go, oh my gosh, we need this too to be competitive, so we rush something out. What is our customer response if, look, oh, we have the same feature, but it's buggy? They're still going to go to your customer. Sorry, your competitor. Um, my answer to that usually, and I draw a lot of this from not on the reading list, but uh, oh my gosh, I'm spacing out. It's usually on my bookshelf. Lean startup, sorry, brain faded, is ship the smallest version of that feature you can right away with good quality. See if customers are actually going to use it. Just because your customer has a, sorry, I'm saying customer, just because your competitor has a feature, um, you don't know how many of their customers using that feature. So if you think you have to have that too, if you think you have to match them, get out the smallest version. We have to be first. Well, be first on a different thing. Compete with your customer on, like, make them play catch up to you. Like if you haven't, and it's probably not your choice as a tester, but if your competitor has a feature, I would say do two things. One, ship the smallest version of that feature you can, so you can get it out with quality and see if customers actually use it. Then also come up with another feature that's really awesome for customers that your competitor doesn't have, and they can play catch up with you. This is, this is not necessarily a quality problem, but again, the point I would put, if your goal is just play catch up all the time and sacrifice getting competitive features out over quality, I think your customers are going to suffer.
Yeah, I feel it's like you want to focus on delivery value for customer, not on focusing what your competitor delivered to their customer.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'll let you. I'm seeing great questions coming out, Artem. I'm gonna let you pick which ones I answer. I love
Okay.
questions.
Yeah. The second question is from Yulia. What is the smallest systematic change have you seen that had the biggest impact on quality?
Um, Great story from Unity. Um, we had an issue where we had some pretty, we had an issue where we had some pretty bad errors reached production that actually did cost millions of dollars in revenue. And this is right as I was taking over our, including other teams, our reliability engineering team, our platforms teams. And a little bit of context here. And we got better at doing retros, which was great. And then a few months later, going into the new year and planning, the general manager of our team, my boss, asked whether should we have a goal to have fewer incidents. We call it incident. Anytime anything is raised, um, to basically an incident would be a Slack channel. Sometimes we page people in. It's a place to discuss the problem and have retros. He said, should we have a goal to have fewer incidents in the next calendar year? And I said, no, I want to have more, a lot more. And he gave me a weird look. And then I said, I want people to be comfortable raising an incident for anything. And he got what I was doing right along. The signal is small change, make it easy for someone to highlight where risk is, because those things are celebrated. And I talked to the teams about that, not just my team, but all of our development teams shipping services. And we had teams proactively raising retro, saying we have a risky feature going out on Monday. We're going to raise an incident now, so we have a place for the everyone to gather and monitor and see what's going on. So we had 3 times as many incidents in the following year, but lost, because we calculated failures by revenue lost. We lost a tiny fraction of the amount of money due to incidents. We still lost money due to incidents sometimes, but we had 3 times as many incidents, but hardly any of them, like a dozen or so, actually caused any revenue impact. So that was the smallest one, just giving people permission and encourage them to bring up any sort of issue earlier. By far, that's the best one. It's the one I'll do again at any job I have. It's like raise incidents for anything.
Yeah. All right. Was there any question? Okay.
Yeah, there is still one in the chat, Tim.
There's a couple in there. Pick one, Artem.
About AI transformation, about QRL transformation in the era of AI. Like, what do you think?
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
How AI
I think
affecting on learning from system and probably risk highlights.
I think used correctly, AI is an accelerant for any knowledge working role, whether it's development, testing, being a lawyer, writing. If you rely on it completely, you're probably going to be in trouble. If you don't rely on it at all, you're probably going to be in trouble. So the question is, I'll reframe it, is how is AI going to help you be successful in the new world? I think, maybe I'll give a couple predictions here. I think a lot of test automation, not all of it, a lot of, especially like web automation, is going to be shortly replaced by AI solutions. I don't know that for sure. That's just a prediction, I think. But it's great because I think I think UI automation, I've written about this for 10 years now, is I think the industry has an unhealthy infatuation with it. I think it's a waste of effort. What that does, if you use AI well, you can do much better testing. Not do the testing for you, but help you understand the system. You can feed AI a code base, figure out like where are the risky, what are the parts. It's not going to know everything. It's just, as you know, if you study Gen AI, it's just really fancy pattern recognition and autocomplete. But if you give it the right context, which is code, it can help you figure out like where should we be testing more or less. I've said for years and years and years, well before AI was even, or for 20 years, most software is over-tested in some places and under-tested in others. And I think we can get closer to finding not only where errors may be, but where customer impacting errors may be through using AI to help us. So, and probably a lot of things I haven't thought of, but the short answer is, I think I'll go back to what I said at first. If you rely entirely on AI, you're going to be in trouble. If you don't rely on AI at all, you're going to be in trouble. I think testers that can leverage AI to help them do their job better or more quickly or more broadly or more thoroughly, you're going to be successful in the long run. You're going to bring massive value to your teams. And you have to, because as you know, software development's moving much faster than we thought because of AI on the dev side. Um, and I don't think things are going away. Uh, uh, Jobs aren't necessarily, I mean, jobs are being eliminated due to AI, not because they're being replaced by AI, because people are more efficient. However, I believe that in order for jobs to go away permanently in the long run, you'd have to believe that all good ideas in software have been solved and there's nothing new to make. I think we're at an interesting crossroads here where there's going to be new products coming out. And anyway, answers in there somewhere, but the short answer is definitely use it. Don't use it exclusively.
Amazing.
Yeah,
And another question about AI. Sorry, question.
Mhm.
Alan, in your opinion, what new weak signals are emerging in teams that actively use AI?
I think, well, I'll go back to a prediction I made over 2 years ago. Like this is within a month of ChatGPT came. I'm not really good at predictions, but I got this one right. I had said in the long run, the ability to read and understand code is going to become more important than the ability to write code. And we are seeing that a lot today. I think the signals people are ignoring, the weak signal is review. Like that looks right, but we don't know it's right. And I think figuring out how to get over that hump to get because we've seen even I mean we've seen the AI coding tools get so much better recently. It's just frightening how quickly they can make stuff. But the things they make aren't always scalable. The things they make aren't always secure. The things they make aren't always performant. We really need that critical thinking and critical ability to read code. And I think we're ignoring some of that over the speed it gives us. So I think that's my best example right now is when I think about it, it's like we're being a little careless because it's good enough and the speed is there.
Great, great. We have another question. I think the more we talk, the more question
That's
we'll
fun.
have. Yeah, another from Alex. Thank you for your talk, Alan. I just started to dive into the topic of syncing in system recently. How can a software tester, without real leverage or a position, use the system syncing approaches you described in your talk? Or should the tester get this leverage?
I would say be known for asking good questions. And you don't have to be the annoying kid who asks why the sky is blue 5 times in a row. But systems thinking allows you to ask the right questions. It allows you to, yeah, it enables you to figure out where patterns exist. And yeah, I'll say, and to find questions and find the right questions to ask. So, and then put yourself you don't have to, again, if you're new in testing, you're not going to show up in your VP's office and ask them questions directly about like what was your thinking here? But you are meeting with developers. You can be known for asking questions around, like, I love it. I love it when I can ask a question and uh and makes people pause and think. And also not being afraid to ask questions, not being afraid to ask questions where you feel like you should know the answer, but you don't. Like, be curious. There's a great Richard Feynman story where he talks about he was working on Los Alamos on a bomb or something, and he got sent to review a factory plan. He was, new out of college, didn't know what he was doing, but he's very curious. He's a very curious professor, and he they were asking him. He was looking at these blueprints and saw this little X on there. Wasn't sure what it was, and it was at that point in the conversation. It's just like a code review when people have been talking about a thing so long that it was almost embarrassing to ask. But he just kind of pointed at one of the X's and said he wasn't sure if it was an air vent or a window. He said, "What about this air vent right here?" And he was really just trying to find out if it was an air vent. But he was lost. But then they started flipping through the pages, going back and forth, and they said, "You're absolutely right, Mr. Feynman. We'll fix this right away." And this happened to me in code reviews at Microsoft. I remember one time I saw a code review come in. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand how it fixed the problem. So I asked a question. Hey, very innocently, I asked, um, when you get a chance, I just glanced at this code. I wasn't even on the code review. I just saw it come in. I thought, oh, this is an interesting feature. I want to see how it works. And I sent mail to the person who owned, and I said, and I asked, uh, when you get a chance, can you explain to me how this works? Because I'm not getting it right now. And I got a reply back in 15 minutes saying, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. Let me fix this and get back to you. And again, don't be afraid to ask questions, but use the systems to ask good questions. But if you don't have the good question, don't be afraid to be curious. That's what I would say.
Okay, I ask again about our donation, guys. Please don't fall by it. And thanks for the answer. You know, when you talk about the changes in the system and about the lower the friction in the system, I feel like when we're adding a lot of controlling steps like quality gates or another kind of review, it feels like we control the process, but not really controlling it. Like it gain our feelings. And another, I mean, it's hard to change mindset if we don't change the system. So we change the system in that we work, and then we can change mindset. That was my thought about the changes in the system.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. Are there any other question, guys, to Alan, or we can go to our after party?
Only about AI.
Okay. I don't know how it would be in English, but today in our internal community, like Swarky community, it's I don't know how we call it.
When we talk about AI, we need to donate, like in
Yeah.
simple words.
Yes.
I already did it actually. So like, okay. It's not a secret that today anyone can code, let's say wipe code, yes, from developers till product owners. But I would like to know your opinion actually. How do you think, is it still like valid to learn some fundamentals of coding in general? I think I know the answer, but it will be interesting like to hear it from you.
The short answer is yes.
Okay, yes.
You've got to be able to read it and understand what's going on. You need to critical thinking and systems thinking become even more important than reading code. But I mean, I've said for decades that writing code is the easy part. Writing code's easy. But understanding it and knowing how it works in the context and knowing if it solves a problem for a customer, those things have always been and always will be the hard part. Just the fact that you can write code quicker now doesn't mean you're solving a problem customers care about. So it ends up being, can you build the right thing? Can you build the right thing that solves a customer's problem and do it in a way that's going to scale for the customer base you've planned? And so that's a long way of saying yes, you have to understand code. And I wouldn't say, like, when I first started in programming, you had to know one language. I spent my first 10 years at Microsoft programming only in C. Today, if you're programming in 3 or 4 or 5 different languages, maybe daily. I think there isn't a lot of difference between. I think there isn't a lot of difference between those languages. There's syntactical difference. Those are things that AI can take care of. This is why the old leet code style coding interviews, they're done because the computer can do that for you. To understand if it's solving the actual problem that you want it to solve in a way that's scalable and makes sense for your customers, that's the hard part. And that's where understanding code as well as systems thinking and critical thinking are really going to help people.
But how to find the balance right now? Because you're pushing from the management to learn more, to use more AI tools to generate something. But in the same way, you need to study and learn some basics, some engineering, some coding, programming languages. I mean, you need somehow to find the balance because otherwise you can't do review. As you mentioned, right? We switch from the generation to reviewing, so we need to understand what is already generated and spend the time. But to make a good review, we need to have a knowledge, we need to have a skills, we need to have.
Well, those take experience, but you're not gonna be able to go read your way into that. It just takes experience. If you're brand new, there's very little of that you can do. But as you get experience doing that, you add new things to your repertoire and you learn things from other people and you learn things from AI even, you will get better at those. Nobody who's only been in the industry like 5 years or less is going to be able to have all that code knowledge and systems knowledge and critical thinking knowledge. You gain that over time. And if you've never coded before, if you've been testing for a while, you probably already have good systems thinking and good critical thinking. Adding to that a little bit of knowledge on code structure and how things work and what sorts of things generally cause problems. And you can even ask AI for that. So here's a code here's some code. What would be the primary ways you would test this? Or what would be the primary areas where this could fail? Can give you some ideas and help you learn more about that code. So there are, I mean, just like anything else, you can't learn it all at once. You can't boil the ocean. Move slow. And the industry is in this really weird pendulum of, I think, over-indexing on AI and thinking and there are people in two camps, and a lot of us in between. There are a lot of people who think that AI is going to solve all the problems forever, and some people who think it's just a fad, it's going to go away. Both of those camps are wrong. What we have today is going to accelerate the way we're making software. It's going to help us move faster, but it's not going to solve all of our problems, and it's also not a fad that's going away.
But how to be with junior engineers? Like, you were mentioning mostly like some kind of experienced ones, but junior like engineers, they start already to work with AI. And
yeah, it's a hard one because they're using AI to generate code that's better than they could probably write on their own. Claude can generate better code than the junior engineers I hired at Microsoft 20 years ago. So they, in my opinion, have to, and that's just a fact, they have to get better at like writing the code is not the skill they need anymore. The junior engineer needs to figure out how can and again, this is a problem that so much has changed even since I briefly left the workforce 10 months ago, that I think the junior engineers, they need to figure out how they're going to quickly move into systems design engineers and not through better prompting, through better understanding of how things work together. So I think it's an unknown. I don't have a great answer because I think it's a rough place. It's a rough time to be a junior engineer right now. Because I think I don't even have a good idea yet on what that clarity looks like.
So advice is not to be junior engineer. Yes.
I'm taking that advice. My advice is always, focus on learning. Don't focus on doing the thing in front of you. Focus on constant learning and expansion of your skills. That's my advice for a junior engineer. Because then you can figure out advice. You can put yourself in a position to ask the right questions at the right time to the right people. If you think if you're just going to focus on doing the same thing every day and not learning, then you're going to get lost. Yeah. Dimitri, you've had your hand up for a long time.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation and insights. Really insightful. I also donated so I can continue asking about the AI. So yeah, that's the rule. I like it. What do you think? Like, I would like to ask about the ratio between development and QA. So in era of AI, I see two groups of people, one or two companies. One of those don't have QA engineers at all, and everything is on the developer's shoulders. Another one is where QA engineers still exist, and they're actually checking the code and owning the quality. So the ratio in my company where I am working right now is around 1:5 to 7. And again, if AI comes to play, what do you think the ratio should be? Because one thought is that the AI is doing the shitty code, and we need like more QA engineers to check this code. Another one is like AI should check AI, and why the hell we should need those QAs at all? So what do you think the
Um,
ratio should be? 1 to 5, 1 to
uh,
1, or your
the
thought?
answer to any sufficiently complex question is it depends.
Yeah, for
Something I've
sure.
said for many years. So I'm going to answer this and Yulia's question as well, because we have developers are using AI to test their code. We need more QA to test their code because they're generating more shit for us to look at faster. So the answer is it depends. So going back to the talk, having a bunch of people test software at the end to try and find all the issues is not teaching what that's teaching developers is as fast as I can create more quality slop because someone will clean it up for me later. So that's what the system's teaching you in that case. So I don't like that one. I don't like the dependency of a bunch of QAs at the end. I like the idea of a smaller ratio, but that tester, that QA's responsibility is not just to test everything from developers. That's a safety net. That's like cleaning up after the horses in a parade. It's not a great job. I'm a big proponent, and this is in agile testing. It's something I've done myself and incorporated in teams at Unity, is have that QA person be more of a test coach. They're going to be doing some testing, some of the more complex testing. But even without AI, I've always said that developers should own the vast majority of automation. They should work with the QA on their team to help them understand where, types of testing that can be done, more testing that can be done. But developers are absolutely 100% responsible or need to be for functional quality of their software, functional correctness. Where testing often fits in is trying to find fit for customer, trying to look at, edge cases, trying to find any of the other issues. If your job is to just focus on cleaning up their slop, you're going to create functionally correct slop that customers don't want to use. So you want me to point at Microsoft products, for example, of this? Let's look at Microsoft Teams. I'm so glad we're on Zoom today. Here's a functionally correct software that's horrible to use, in my opinion. And I can say that having worked on Teams when it was up till it was a beta product. We need developers to own functional correctness of the quality, and we also need people looking at the system level holistic quality of the product. I like that, Veronica. I will come to your team and I will repeat this, something I said for years and years and years and years. I'm happy to write letters, record shorts or reels or whatever, and so I'm very adamant about this. Just because devs are creating more AI slop, it is their job to turn that slop into something that they think solves the problem for the customer with a tester's help if needed. And that tester can spend the time they're not helping developers and working with them directly to ask some deeper systems level questions about how the software is going to be used in production. In the end, you're not the customer. The customer is going to decide that. And I don't want you to necessarily be a proxy for the customer, but your job as a tester is to look at the whole of the thing your team is shipping and understand the best you can where risk is and where it may be, where problems may occur, and help highlight those to the teams, asking those good questions. But please do not put yourself or your team in a position where you're trying to test quality into the product at the end of the cycle, at all.
Yeah. And we missed one more little question from Olha. There is high-risk system like medical, for example, are less flexible for internal changes. Is there any specific special approach to user asking questions always reduce, but doesn't get QA team anywhere yet? Any advice?
I've never tested mission critical software like that, so I can only hypothesize. Definitely there's going to be some more care there. You're not going to be using AI to, again, if I'm creating medical devices, yes, I may use AI to help me generate some of the code for that, especially like the user interface part the doctor interfaces with. And I may even use AI for the functional part, but man, am I going to test. That is going to get extra testing time. I am not going to do continuous deployment. I might do continuous delivery into a staging environment, but I am very careful what goes to customers. And those things are there through regulations as well. There's tests that have to be done through regulations. So those don't go away. And there are test teams that do that compliance regulation. I think we can actually make advances to medical equipment and make doctors' lives easier. It isn't always about the customer. If we can put better UI around some of the medical systems and make them easier to use and communicate to other systems, I'm all for that. But the part that decides on medication doses or how much, as a famous example here, how much X-ray exposure to give someone during an X-ray, that part needs, again, it can be generated by AI initially, but man, does it need extra testing and extra attention to compliance, and extra code review, and all those things. It needs to move slower. It can still move much faster than it moves today, but it's not going to move as fast as we're moving today with people, generating, entire new websites in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I believe with such software, the problem not is generation the code, because even if that's very craft-made code by somebody's hands, it still should be tested the same way with all the quality gates.
Agreed.
Right. Do we have any more questions to Alan in our official part? Because we have
Can
an
I
official-
ask one more question?
Sure.
I just wonder if the system doesn't allow any changes, like quality changes, because I don't know, it rewards speed over quality and asks using AI technologies to make faster. But at some point, I see that some QAs are tired for reviewing because your mental capacity is limited, yeah, and you need to be so involved. And at this point, what do you recommend to do? Just change system, or bring this to the higher upper management and tell that it is impossible to run so quickly because I don't know, our legs are not so long or something like that. What are your thoughts on that?
It can
Did it
be, I mean,
make
you can
sense
change,
for
you can
you?
change the system or you can change the system. You can by
If I
finding a new
can
system to work
change
in.
this particular
Right.
system, like I'm trying
This is
to,
where
sorry.
no, you're okay. I would ask, like, these are things I would bring up in a retrospective. So your team, again, this doesn't have to be, you don't have to change the entire organization, but I assume it's one, if your team is not doing retrospectives at all, I would highly encourage them to do so. This is where you make these changes. When you come, a lot of times the retro is just like, this went wrong, this went wrong, this went wrong. Okay, we've all vented, we're done. That's not a good retro. The retro is reflection, analysis, and let's find one, maybe two, but I like one. Let's do one thing differently the next time. And this is how you change the system. So I would start, and again, if you're not doing retros, the team doesn't want to do retros, then again, you're a little stuck and you don't necessarily have to go all the way up to the top to make that change. But you need to find a forum where you can suggest small changes. And the retro, to me, traditionally has been the best place to do that. Again, tiny, small steps. If there's one thing we can do differently the next iteration, what will it be? And ideally, there's a place you can do that. And what I would do if I was going to talk to someone more senior, it isn't like, I want to change the system. I would approach it, for me, I would say, I think our team could learn a lot more how to do better if we had regular retrospectives. What do you think about encouraging our teams to do retros? And start there. Because I think, again, I've been in VP roles. I'm lucky. I get to have direct impact over how the system behaves. But I haven't always been in those roles, and I've been able to change the system from different places by just finding places to make slight changes to the system. We're not trying to change everything at once. But anyway, that's my long advice, but hopefully helpful.
By the way, it's actually good question you touched. So you were on this kind of manager role, yes? But how do you usually behave? Like, do you want to sell your idea, or like, okay, I'm manager, and everybody needs to listen me. So, what's your opinion about it?
Well, I'm very much not that kind of leader, and like I'm in charge, you must listen to me. My
Okay.
style is because I want to encourage people to disagree with me. I want to encourage people to have different ideas. So I'm wrong a lot on purpose. I want dissent. I want different ideas. So I don't tell people what to do. I think, what do you think about doing this? I plant seeds. The values, I will do things from the incentives. Like I own those. I can easily try and make sure that what I say as far as values and what I reinforce are the same. I very much, my job as a leader is to walk the talk of whatever values and incentives I've in place for the team. But other than that, I want the ideas to come from them. And again, not all leaders work that way. I'm not like, look at me, I'm great. It's more of like this is what works for me to make sure those ideas come up. Not I've worked for plenty of leaders who say I'm in charge, everything I say goes. And even within those, you can make small changes from at a more ground level.
I feel
Yeah,
like it's
I
more
don't
like
I don't use my title or my authority to inflict change upon the org. I try and build a culture and a system they can work in safely.
I feel like it's close to the coaching style.
Yeah. I do a lot of coaching in my leadership. But I hire smart people. I need to trust them to make their decisions too.
Another point to my view that to be a good leader, you need to also learn about the coaching.
Constant learning. I've been in software for over 30 years now, and I've never stopped learning, and that's the key to long-term success. Always put yourself on a steep learning curve.
Cool. All right. I think that's it for now, and I'll stop recording soon. Thanks for everyone for staying. Thanks, Alan, for the talks and answering the question from our audience. Audience is amazing. I saw a lot of eggplants. I appreciate it. That means our tradition works and engaging as well. So thank you and